We look back at Optus's catastrophic week.
and what it means for consumers, businesses, and maybe whether you can get compensation.
Hi there. Welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, the award winning tech podcast where we catch up with Australia's leading tech journalists and commentators to dive into the big stories of the week. I'm Alex Kidman, joined as always by Adam Turner. Hey, Adam, in a segment that I'm rapidly starting to consider just simply renaming This Week in Elon Musk Insanity, he's launched a new chatbot. It's called Grok, and it's going to be fed with live Twitter data. Nothing's going to go wrong with that, right?
Oh, I think it already exists. Most people know it as their crazy racist uncle. It sounds like just codifying that concept. Yeah, what could be wrong with a bot trained on real time Twitter data when they have no moderators anymore, keeping out the Nazis? Yeah, love it.
I'm sure people will be lining up to pay for that. And speaking of a man who people should line up to pay, we're joined once again in the studio by the one and only Stilgarian.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and happy universe to you both.
So, still, Grok will apparently serve up homemade cocaine recipes. Is this what humanity needs from AI?
I would say yes, except for the fact that might be construed as illegal. So I'll say definitely we don't need that. I certainly wouldn't trust a cocaine recipe generated by like a generative AI bot based on what random stuff it comes out with. Like if
Yeah,
Google searches AI will tell you that there is no country in Africa starting with a
Starting with a
K.
K, yes. Yes.
Spoiler,
We've
there
covered that.
is. It's
Yeah.
Kenya. um, then I hate to think what it will tell randoms to make their cocaine out of. Maybe stale bread, wagyu steak, sawdust,
asbestos.
and
Like,
broken
exactly how
glass.
much
There's
asbestos do you
asbestos.
need in good cocaine? I've always wondered that.
I
For
mean, the more
legal
the
reasons,
better.
I
Better,
feel
I would
like
have
I
thought.
should say we're not telling people to go and make that recipe. Just to nicely cover us.
Or any other recipe for cocaine.
Well, if you were trying to download this podcast on Wednesday and you managed it, the chances are you weren't on Optus. I think most Australians know that Optus was down massively on Wednesday, and we're still somewhat in the dark about why that was, aren't we, Silgarian?
Well, I don't know. The communications minister, Michelle Rowland, said there was a fault in the core. We know
Oh,
there
that
was a
sells it then.
fault. Yeah, well, we know there was a fault because internet was down for 12 hours. I mean, we know it was in the core because everything went down for Optus, not just where the fault was. So that's good. We've got a little further down the track, and late on Thursday afternoon, Optus said it was a network event. Yes, the event was, the network wasn't. That's an event. The end of the universe is an event. But they said the network event
Yep.
led to a cascading failure. And I go, yeah, we know that bit because the internet wasn't there, and the phones weren't there, and the Melbourne trains weren't there, and Victorian hospitals weren't there, and that poor woman's cat didn't get fed. If you noticed that story, no. Okay, here's a question I have.
That was a fabulous bit of trivia. Yes.
It is. Now, here's the thing. All right. Many people have these kind of Internet of Things automatic cat feeders. Feed your cat rather than your cat waking you up. Any cat owner knows what I mean. But this particular cat feeder didn't feed the cat at 6:10 a.m. because it wasn't on the internet. Now, I am broadly the opinion that feed the cat at 6:10 a.m. is not the kind of super secure killer robot please confirm instruction that needs connecting back to the internet to confirm. Just keep feeding the cat until you hear further, right? It's not a killer robot, probably. Anyway,
I've actually tested one of those things, and they are remarkably stupid, but a lot of them have webcams in them, and that's where I think the back to the internet part of it comes in, as opposed to just being a timer that just says, right, splurt out some cat treats at 6:10
It
a.m.
still has a good point that
okay.
there's too many products these days that completely shit the bed when they can't access the internet, and they should be a little bit more self-sufficient.
Yeah, the internet of really dumb things.
Yes.
Anyway, we had a network event which led to a cascading failure, which is a bit like explaining your car breaking down by going, "Yep, the engine again." And we had reports in the media saying, "Oh, it's the same thing that brought down Facebook the other year." What? A network event? Well, everything on the internet is a network event. Like everything. This podcast is a network event. A very small one and probably a little less controversial than taking off half of Australia, but
Oh, we're working
here
on
we
it.
are.
Look, can I state we were not responsible for Optus going down on Wednesday? I can say that with some confidence, even if Optus
Mm.
isn't saying that much. But
Yeah,
an
look, and
awful
I
lot.
want to say
Of,
something in Optus's defence. No, I'll roll that back. It's not defending Optus, it's more attacking the people who demanded instant answers. Telephone networks, national telephone and data networks are incredibly complex networks of computers that have been constructed in bits and pieces over decades. Now, I don't know whether you guys have ever used a computer, but if you have,
once,
you
twice.
what? Yeah. You'll know that they just do weird and mysterious things and fail sometimes. So these incredibly complex things can, on occasions, fail in spectacular ways. And then you've just got to stand there and look at it and go, what the fudge just happened? No idea. And it's made even harder if the way you get into the network to look at what's happening in the network is via that network, which is now broken. Um, it's a challenge. Now, fine. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is 12 hours. Really? When was the last time you practiced some sort of disaster recovery, even if you just did it as a like a tabletop role-playing game exercise? You know, in terms of, well, here's what people are saying, so what's your messaging back out? And I can rant about how you do a bit, disaster response in that way. But here we are. It's the next day. People want to know what's happened. In the Australian Financial Review, the head of Optus said, "Oh well, it's complex and technical, and we can't explain it in a soundbite." And I go, "Well, don't try to explain it in a soundbite. Just explain it. Tell us what's going on."
Explain it in a technical
Mm.
document.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then us tech journalists or other people will translate that, and they'll talk to other experts, and they'll go, yeah, that really was a weird thing, and Optus got caught out, and they're going to learn, or they'll look at it and go, "Oh, you flat muppets, you know, you really, that shouldn't have happened," and we don't know. I need to stress again, we don't know because Optus hasn't given anyone any real information about what happened.
Just to get a feel for the scope of the outage, was it just the mobile network, or was parts of the fixed network as well? So was that like
That's right.
broadband NBN connections and home phone services, data
The
centers? What?
the whole wombat, mate. The
Yeah.
entire wombat stopped wombling. It's a
So
mixed
that
metaphor.
explains why, because I was trying to figure out why some contact centers were offline. CBA and Westpac couldn't receive calls. Service New South Wales couldn't receive calls, and I'm like, what? The entire data center is running on Optus Mobile, but now, sorry, call center. Now I
No,
get
no,
it.
no.
It's not just mobile. It was actually some of the fixed line stuff taken out as well.
Oh, and when they're talking about the core network, it's, oh yeah, I'm a bank and I've got a data center and I've got a big fat pipe that goes through the core. Everything goes through this mythical thing called the core. It's not really
Yeah.
a thing as such, but in the middle of this whole network or network of networks, or maybe not in the middle, maybe threaded through it in complex ways, are billing what goes where, what has access where. Does this big corporate customer with 1,000 people, do they run through our anti-spam for their email, or does it go through somewhere else? Are they using file storage here? Are they using file storage at some external provider? All of this. Yeah, who's billing it? Who's paying for it? Where does it go? Is the data going to the right place? And there are certain key things happening in there which can cause problems. Obviously, there's the joke in IT, it's DNS, the domain name system's failed. But yeah, it's true. If that stops working, then big chunks of it goes out because verticalhold.com.au is hosted where? Dunno, can't send traffic there. You're offline. Um, but if it's also the thing called routing, and we might have to do a bit about this because the current theory is routing was the failure. Um, Again, it's a bit like saying, "Oh, so it was the gearbox went," or so. It really doesn't narrow it down very much. But there are theories kicking around. If billing goes down, then everyone tries to log in, and it says, "Nah, nah, we don't believe you. You don't have an account here. We're
You
not
haven't paid for
connecting
it. Yeah.
you." And there's lots of ways. So yeah, everything went down. Other examples. I mean, we can joke about the cat did get fed because it went and woke up its owner. As they said, they came to the bedroom and complained to management. Um, sure, cat got fed, but Melbourne's trains went down because trains, obviously, a data network, signalling, information, ticketing, everything is a data network. Now, all power to the Transport Authority and the companies that run Melbourne's trains. They had a backup data network, which was also with Optus.
Oh, 'cause that's what I was actually one of the things I was gonna bring up later is, isn't this a big ad for redundancy? But so they
Yeah.
were
Oh,
had
yeah.
2 accounts with Optus just in case the Optus network went down. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Is
and
that why do not more of these organizations have redundancy? Because it's just too expensive to set up with 2 completely different telcos and 2 completely
look,
different
well,
networks, so
of
you
course it is.
you
Of
picks
course
your
it
winner
is.
and takes your chances?
Yeah. Because if you are setting up a network of 10 mega blobs in size with one provider, you expand that and say, well, I want 2 of them. The next one's not going to cost twice as much. It might cost another 20% more or something because it's the same design. But if you start splitting it across others, and then so I can see why it happens. It's a bit like families going for a deal that says, "Well, bundle all of your family's phones and your broadband and stuff and your pay TV or whatever with the one company, and we'll give you all these discounts." But that said, a mate of mine who used to work in corporate compliance and risk management just looked at that and just said, multiple people signed off on that to
Mm.
say that your backup network is the say isn't a backup. But then this happens in the industry. I know of a company that was selling a payroll system, an online payroll system in particular for fly in, fly out workers. So some of the biggest companies in Australia, the resources companies,
Yeah.
were using this company to manage their payroll. And they advertised, yeah, we have redundancy for reliability. Yeah, the redundancy was another DSL link on the same copper through a 6-pair cable going into their shed in Penrith, which was their data center, as the other one.
And let me
So
guess,
there
when the
was.
backhoe took out the first copper line, it also took out the other copper line next to it, strangely enough.
I don't know whether that eventually happened, but I found that out because I knew someone in the resources industry, and uh, B, turned out when this resources company, he was the chief information security officer for this resources company. He said when they did the risk analysis, they found interesting things like payroll. Okay, if payroll's screwed, you just pay all your people the same as you did last month and figure it out later, right? Just give your people money, your resources company. That's not going to stop you. The thing that was absolutely critical was the conveyor belt that went from the big pile of iron ore at the side of the wharf onto the ship. Because if the ship wasn't loaded and was in port one more day, they had to pay out all these penalty rates for late delivery, another day's hire of the ship, all sorts of dramas. The next ship wasn't going to get in. So,
And I mean, this stuff goes from your larger examples there down to the smaller ones. I did a bunch of radio on this, and I was chatting on ABC Radio Melbourne, and had one caller say they'd literally had to run out of their house because they had an elderly relative having a heart attack,
yeah,
and they couldn't call 000 because they had an Optus landline.
yeah. And if you are a company that, like even a cafe, and I know the ABC probably
Hmm,
asks cafes as well, but you've got a food retailer, whatever, you're using
hmm.
Square or you're using Tyro payments or something, and you're taking credit cards. Well, who carries all that cash with them these days? And you can't use your system because your phone link is back there.
And it's at this point, listeners, and we're not making this up, where Stilgarian has fallen offline during podcast recording. We're going to try and get him back. Please hold. So, to an extent, we are still shooting in the dark on this one, but there's been a lot of discussion around BGP, which does sound like a 70s disco act, but it's not. Still, can you explain
I've got all their
BGP
albums.
to the masses?
This is one of the biggest challenges in explaining how the internet works. So I'm going to have a go. One of the most important things to realize about the internet is no one knows how it's put together. Like no one. There is no map. um, because connections come and go in real time anyway, right? Something fails. Remember that phrase, the internet routes around censorship because it interprets it as damage or
Hmm,
some such thing? Well, it is designed to route around damage, not because it was designed to survive a nuclear war, but because it was designed to survive really unreliable communications networks of the 1960s.
hmm,
The internet really is that old in terms of its technology. So, routing. Essentially, how the internet works is that no one really has the full picture. So all you do is let's do this as if you're someone exploring a town. You're going somewhere. You have no map. So what do? You ask someone for directions, right? So you're in Sydney and you say, "How do I get to Melbourne?" And say you're in the center of Sydney, and they say, "Well, I don't really know, but I know if you go down to the end of this street and turn left, you'll be getting closer. Ask someone there." And you just keep doing that. You go down to the next corner and say, "Oh, yeah. You need to get onto the Liverpool Highway. That's down there. You'll see a freeway sign. Go down there and go way down there. Go 5 kilometers down there and just ask someone." And so on. And eventually you get there. Now, how does each place, each corner, know what's the best way to go, given that connections are coming and going all the time? And the answer is all of the routers, the computers that just control the switching of the internet, tell each other the best way. So if you're at an exchange point between Optus and Telstra, you're an Optus customer, you're sending data to someone at Telstra. When it reaches the border between your two networks, it asks, "I'm trying to get to this customer. What's the best way?" And then Telstra will answer back, "Oh, well, anyone in this block of addresses, send down that wire, and
hmm.
we'll figure it out." So all of these routers are gossiping. They're constantly gossiping about what's the best and fastest way. And the protocol for this conversation is called the Border Gateway Protocol, BGP, because it's used by the gateways at the border between networks. It's as simple as that. And when you connect your own computer to the internet, you don't use that because it's really simple. You have a computer, you have a router of some sort connecting you to your internet service provider. It has two questions. Is the address inside your own house, your own network? Yes, just deliver it. If not, Just shove it up the pipe to your internet service provider. Let them sort it out. It's a feature, not a bug. This is really good. You don't need to know how any of the rest of the internet is put together. And as I say, this
Because as you say, it
conversation is
constantly changes, so there's no
yeah,
point
yeah,
in
yeah.
having a map.
That's
Yeah.
right. There might be a lot of traffic. A fishing trawler digs up a fiber optic cable. A backhoe digs up something over there. Someone accidentally pulls the power plug here. Someone types in the wrong configuration for another system somewhere else. Okay, so that's good. It's good, but it's very fragile. It's amazing it works at all because what if that conversation? What if all of that gossip is just wrong? What if you come up to a major intersection and the bloke there, it's a bit like that old joke, oh, how do I get to Belfast? It's like, oh no, if I was going to Belfast, I wouldn't start from here. Um, but what if the router says, oh, here I am in Sydney, I want to go to Melbourne, and you're there in Haymarket somewhere, and you say, how do I get to Melbourne? It says, I'll go down Thingamy Lane. Oh, all right. Well, Thingamy Lane's a dead end. What do you mean? There is no corner down there. Come back out. No, no, go down Thingamy Lane. And that can happen. It happened once where Pakistan accidentally took itself off the internet completely. Google did it once. It took a lot because someone manually was editing one of these routing tables to set up the basics of all this and left a slash off the end of one of the commands and just boom, gone.
So you
Happens
can
all the
basically
time.
fat finger it and take the whole thing down.
Absolutely. And this happens from time to time.
So that's one possibility. Mistakes are made. The other possibility is air quotes, mistakes are made. And there have
Hmm.
been examples, for example, where due to this gossiping of it's called advertising the routes, all of Europe's banking traffic just got shunted via China for an hour because
That's the kind of thing
reasons.
you'd want.
Terribly sorry. Won't happen again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Is this
And I was,
because
oh, for
someone
goodness
can game the system? Is it going on like a
yes.
majority's rule? So if you manage to game the system, you basically override the common sense and get everyone to agree that, oh yes, you're right, it's down that dead end street.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
that, as with all of these things, that is an oversimplification,
Yes.
but the fine details will, for most people, not add any more understanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
The core message in all of this is that all of the different networks, whether it's a big network or a small network, an ISP or a data center or a Google or an Apple or whatever,
Mm.
you know, Google Drive. It's all just bolted together in real time by a series of rumors which are spread by these devices. Now there is some work on trying to make it a little more secure, at least, so you can't just lie and say, "Hi, I'm Internet Pakistan, and I think all traffic to Pakistan should go over there to Belarus." It's like, sorry, who are you? And that's the question. So now there has been solid work in the last few years of attaching digital signatures to all these things, so that at least you can say, no, 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 no. We know you're not Internet Pakistan because you don't have the correct encryption keys. So go away. That still means you can fat finger it because if you really are Internet Pakistan and you just get it wrong, um, then you legitimately get it wrong and everyone will
Hmm.
believe you. And the other aspect is if it does go wrong, oh, our routers have got the wrong information in them. We need to connect to our routers so we can change that. Oh, wait, we can't connect to our routers because
The directions are wrong. Yeah.
we can't reach them
We've
because
just locked
Yeah.
the keys
the
in the car.
directions are wrong. So it cascades. And then if I saw some lovely speculation, and all right, I should say speculation is bad, but it is kind of legit, I think, to point out that Optus probably uses the Optus network internally. Like, duh. So if you want an access code to get into the data center to physically access the router to reboot it or to plug a laptop into it, whatever, you're going to pull up the internal portal to request permission to do that, except how do you connect to the internal portal? And how do you phone your boss on your Optus mobile from your Optus mobile when Optus mobile isn't working? So what this tells me is that if you want it to take not 12 hours, it takes quite a lot of preparation and rehearsal to have procedures in place that work without the systems being there. Now, air traffic control systems rely on computers, but they also still have those little wooden strips that they write a piece of paper with the plane's flight details, whatever, on it, and stack them up and physically look at this. I mean, the young air traffic controllers are probably a bit out of practice with how to do that, but at least they've still
The
got
system
pencil
is
and
still
paper and
there. Yeah.
radios and
And
cups of
the
So
coffee.
my
Yeah.
my understanding still that the reason why BGP is being suggested as part of the cause of all of this is because some external metrics suggested that the Optus network went from like 2 to 3,000 announcements, which was normal, to like 900,000 announcements, which definitely is not, suggesting that there was some kind of routing error going on.
Yeah. We've seen that in particular. There's some data come from Matt Tett at NX Test Lab, which does all sorts of monitoring and testing and things of this. And at 4 a.m. on Wednesday,
Mm.
which is when this drama started, all of those what are called BGP announcements, all of that gossip just exploded. Like normally it chugs along in the background, routine things. But when something goes seriously wrong, there's a flurry of activity as everywhere across the internet works out how to deal with the change. And that ripples across the whole internet because it suddenly might be okay, we're routing from Perth to Auckland in New Zealand, Perth, Australia to Auckland in New Zealand. And normally that might go Perth, Adelaide, Sydney, Auckland, but suddenly something in Sydney fails. So, no, we need to go via Brisbane. So, Sydney and Brisbane tell Adelaide to start sending things up that way and also to tell Perth, maybe if you've got a route via Darwin, what speeds are you getting on that? And this happens all the time. So, yes, at 4 a.m. Wednesday morning, there was an enormous flurry of these announcements out of the Optus network.
so here's a question that concerns me, and it might sound a little bit conspiracy theory-ish, but I don't think it's
Beautiful.
unreasonable. We saw the kind of chaos that was created when, assumingly by accident, this happened. Now, one of the things we're supposed to be preparing for is when this kind of thing doesn't happen by accident.
Hmm.
And there are, certain parties out there who might be very interested in making something like this not happen by accident, perhaps as part of a larger conflict, shall we say. If we couldn't manage yesterday for 12 hours and they couldn't figure out what was wrong and it crippled all these kind of systems, does that say that we're not really in a good position to cope if someone deliberately tries to do something like this?
As Tony Jones might have said, I'll take that as a comment. Sure. Yeah. Again, what level of reliability you're looking at. If you've got a home internet connection, it's probably advertised at 99% reliability. That means that over a course of a month, it can be down for 8 hours and still be within spec.
Mm.
Hmm.
Now, I do note that the practice of advertising these uptime things are no longer done as terms of uptime guarantees, but the kind of thing the government wants to put on the telcos is the time to fix a fault.
Mm.
So if your home internet is broken, they're expected to fix it within a couple of days, mate, or whatever it is. If you're paying for a business plan, then that's more. If you're running a business, but it's on a domestic grade plan with no backups on whatever, then that's a risk management decision you have
Mm.
taken.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to victim blame. What I do want to say, though, is that these are all risks. How will your business run if your comms go down? What are you going to do? If you absolutely need to have a phone, well, where's your phone on another network? Where's your backup? Or where's your plan for how you will cope without a phone for a whole morning? Because we know that happens. 12 hours, different kettle of fish. Um, particularly if you've got a home broadband or a business broadband that says, oh, it comes with 4G backup. And well, it's no help if that goes down as well. So these are decisions you have to make. People say small businesses are running really close to the edge. They can't afford to lose a day's revenue. There's another school of thought, which your accountant might have, is that well, there are a couple of hundred days in the year where you are earning revenue, and if you lose 0.5% of your revenue and your business goes under, you've got more serious problems than a bad
Mm,
phone.
mm.
But if you've invested your time and your life and your money in your small business, you don't want to hear that. So I get that. Um, and then we saw a couple of experts on Thursday talking about, oh, we need to have backup, mobile phone networks. I said, sure, phone bill doubled.
Mm.
We can fix that.
What do you think? The
Double it.
other suggestion that I've seen mooted right now, if you have a mobile phone and you are outside a service area or your network goes down, you can still access SOS. You can still call 000 via any available
Mm,
network. That's just an agreed shared mobile phone network sharing system. The suggestion has, of course, been punted around. Well, why can't all of Optus's customers be bumped onto Telstra and Vodafone when this kind of thing happens?
I imagine they
Well,
would
I mean,
love that. Now's when I wish that Sol Trujillo was still here so we could hear his
apart from the
response to
ones
that.
who flooded into stores to suddenly buy SIMs, and apparently both Vodafone and Telstra and the various MVNOs on those networks saw huge sign-ups on Wednesday. But apart from those, what's your
mm.
thinking on having that as a mandated roaming idea?
It's worth looking at. I'm horrified at what the accounting for that might look like.
Mm.
Technically,
I mean, Telstra and
um,
Three used to do it.
technically, I suspect it's not as complicated as you might think because we already do it, as you say, for the triple O calls and other emergency things. It's just it's just a matter of opening it up for that. He says, as an instant effing expert on the topic. Uh, these things are possible. Roaming already exists between, telcos in different countries. It's built into the protocols. And now that I think about it, yeah, it's not a technical problem, it's a business problem.
But you'd have to have it only kick in certain circumstances. Because if you are an Optus customer and you go into an Optus black spot and then you automatically roam to Telstra, Telstra's
Uh,
like, well, that's why we bloody charge extra because
Bridge.
we've got better coverage in that spot. So we shouldn't be
Or even
that. No,
actually,
that's exactly what
well,
I'd be
yeah,
arguing if I
that's
was Telstra. It's got
yeah,
to
yeah,
kick in.
and rightly
Someone's got
so.
to make a decision. All right, we've crossed a threshold. There is a major network event. We will make this happen rather than, oh, hang on, I can't get my telco, therefore I automatically get access to everybody else.
Well, you know who is going to have to make that decision?
Who?
Communications Minister Michelle
mm,
Rowland,
Mm,
because government ministers are the people who decide what counts as an emergency.
yeah.
Government ministers already decide, and I had this in once, and I had this once. I was in Perth. My plane back to Sydney was late because we had a thing we needed to check out, a technical glitch, whatever. Um, but of course, Sydney Airport has an 11 p.m. curfew, and we could go really, really fast. They brought another couple of tons of fuel over, or however much, because airlines are run on a speed that's efficient, not a speed that gets you there faster. They're a commercial business. But putting a whole plane full of people up in a Perth hotel overnight is a lot more expensive than just pouring more fuel into those tanks and amping open the throttles. And you could tell the pilot was really looking forward to doing that. But we then ran the risk of our time in Sydney being after 11 p.m. So there's a kind of shoulder period. And if you go into that, each individual event has to be approved by the Transport Minister in Canberra. So we were sitting on sort of at the gate, ready to roll with a fully fueled aircraft, Boeing 767 in Perth, waiting for the minister to say we could go for this flight. Nah, nah.
Mm.
We didn't
Not
we
the kind
didn't
of
get
thing you want to be
didn't
relying
get
on
the
all the
green
time.
Well,
light.
speaking of nut, the other thing that has been coming up and has been being
That's
discussed,
Optus's slogan, isn't it?
maybe,
Yeah,
maybe,
that's the mother of all segues. Applies
um,
to every situation.
the question of compensation. Because at a consumer level, if you look at it,
Aha.
you're kind of screwed. Actually, the Optus, I did dig into the Optus consumer contract because those are public facing, and you're basically the only thing you're guaranteed is access charges. You break that down over the average contract, and even for the 13 odd hours they were offline, you may be talking like $2-3 on the average contract. What has Optus set?
Well, let's
Yeah.
do that. Let's say there's 30 days in a
Mm.
month. It was down for 12 hours, which is half a day, so you're owed 1/60th of your monthly charge
Yeah,
back. Enjoy that sugar cube to go
exactly.
with your
But
coffee.
has Optus
Mm.
said anything at this stage still about its compensation plans? Because there's certainly a fair few angry people out there keen on this idea.
Yeah, Optus is under the impression, at least as of late Thursday afternoon, that giving their uh, personal customers, their
Mm.
not business. I don't know what they're doing for business, but for their personal customers, either phone or broadband, if they're on a postpaid, they're going to get 400 gig of extra data to use for free over a month for the rest of the year. And if you're on a prepaid phones and well, you don't get prepaid kind of fixed internet, but prepaid phones will have unlimited data on the weekends for the rest of the year.
So this is a repeat of what Telstra did, I think, back in 2016 when they had those kind of rolling outages, and they just said, "Yeah, look, Sundays are just kind of a bit of a free for all."
Yeah, yeah,
But it's
yeah.
a
Free
bit
data for
less.
everyone.
I'm going to argue that's a lot less enticing given the way current mobile contracts work. Most people have more data than they can use. So just saying, well, you got more on top of that,
Yeah.
not very exciting.
Well, that's right. That's been the competitive point with all of
Mm,
the packages coming in, right? And Optus has already been the one
mm,
who is pushing that.
mm.
Telstra less so. Optus, that's been their selling point. Lots of data. Yeah, I don't know that anyone's going to be that excited about that, but we'll see. It's early days yet. We still don't have anyone admitting to this being a problem. The rumor mill says, and I can see you both cringing now. Is he going to say it? Is he going to say it? No, I'm not going to name any names, but the rumor mill in the kind of network tech, grapevine, is that bad BGP information was being given to Optus's routers by another major company. And I say major company quite deliberate, not another major telco, just to blur the lines a bit.
I've heard some of
Um,
these blurred lines myself, and yes, it is possible that this rumor might possibly be a rumor, but that's probably about as far as we can take it.
yeah, look, we know it had something to do with routing because there was a whole lot of routing
Yeah.
explosions,
Mm.
at 4 a.m. But was that a symptom or was that part of the cause?
Mm. Are they reacting after the
And
fact because something else has caught fire in a software sense, and
yeah, yeah,
therefore
yeah,
going nuts?
and then look
Yeah.
further back, and then look further back. During the census fail of 2016, we had the magic thing that was caused in part by a routing problem because uh, a company, I won't name names because I forget exactly which player in this mess did it. They had their routers set up with a whole lot of custom routing tables to deal with traffic and work out whether someone was doing the census from inside or outside Australia and all that. It's fine. But they hadn't then told the routers to save that new routing table out to disk. So when they rebooted the router, it just came back up with the default routing table in it.
Oops.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Yeah, look, you learn all these things. Lessons may be learned from this, and maybe even as a result of the learnings from those lessons, something will be changed. Shall I list all the inquiries we already know about? Comms Minister inquiry, government inquiry, the Australian Communications and Media Authority, a Senate committee, and the Victorian state government have all announced inquiries so far. I would not be surprised if the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission decided to put its hand up for this. Then there's the other state governments. Final thing, I reckon, watch out for the scams. The scammers are already there sending out text messages saying, were you affected by the Optus failure? Click here to register for.
Please, yes, please verify your
that's
Optus
not a
login
thing.
details so we know
Yeah.
who to send the check. Yes.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's true.
It's not a thing. It is not. That is not a thing. Optus is not offering refunds. Optus has not said anything else.
The Australian government
and
is
Optus
not
will
going
contact
to,
you in the way they
The
normally
Australian
do.
government is not going to send you a thing saying log into your MyGov to register your complaint to the Optus inquiry at this point, because I'm sure some scammer will try that too.
Do you think the scammers will claim compensation? You know, all those missed scam SMSs they couldn't send out on Thursday,
Oh,
on Wednesday?
mate, that's really
There's got to
screwed
be a
up their
lawsuit
business.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Although that would then require them to give their bank account details.
Well, that just eventually wraps up this week's episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Stilgarian for joining us this week.
My very great pleasure.
And Stilgarian, you now get the chance to promote whatever you like, a website, an app, a podcast, or whatever. And seeing as how the last time you were on the show, you promoted the wonderful Australian quoll, I'd like you to name Australia's worst animal.
A quokka.
Oh, controversial.
Is Australia's
controversial.
worst animal. No, I'm straight in with that. It is a stupid animal. It is an animal so dumb you can just walk up to it and smash its brains in with a rock and it'll still just sit there smiling at you. Quokkas are bullshit. They are bullshit animals.
So the dodos of the 21st century.
Well, if only, right? The dodos had the decency to eventually, like, a dodo at least apparently tasted nice.
They're finger looking good, apparently, yes. And what? And if people can get past the quokka hate, what of yours should they be checking out?
They should be looking for the podcast, The 9 p.m. Edict, which I'm currently in the spring series. We've had some great stuff. Upali Divisekra, the science communicator, was on recently, and we talked about frogs and about how we should approach the rising COVID-19 figures again in Australia. We had Toby Walsh, the artificial intelligence expert, on a couple of weeks back. And if you go there to the 9pmedict.com or the 9pm Edict in your favorite podcast app, you'll also see that I'm running a crowdfunder at the moment. People pay me for this. Well, not this.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. The fools.
And as always, if you want to catch us, you can do so via the Vertical Hold webpage at verticalhold.com.au, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can look up Adam and me on Mastodon, Blue Sky, and Threads. And Grok is probably impersonating us right now on Twitter/X.
And if you were impacted by the Optus outage, if you've got your theories on what happened, if you just feel strongly about quokkas, drop us a line and let us know.
So,
and the person who owns that cat.
And the person who owns that
They want answers, damn it.
And I tell you what, that cat will not rest. And well, it will. It'll just go to sleep.
It will neither forgive nor forget.